Can anybody hear me? Is anybody able to pick me up? Let's see if this helps. All right. I know I can see my voice. So you can hear me here, but when I change it, it won't let me. All right, so, wow, apparently that was very loud. Okay, that is something I'll have to, so the hover cam works with the mic. All right, I guess the young Mr. Harris will have to help me with that one. I will show very quickly here then the NoRe account. I know I'll have to switch screens in a moment, but what you will see is the good thing is Mr. Colahan's class has worked with that. It seems like it's pretty good. That he, I'm sorry, I'm trying to also do two things at once to try to help. I don't know if that's going to make a difference now or not. They seem to like it a lot, so we're going to try it as well, and that's going to just be for completion. That's we're going to look to see if it does help with your learning, and I'm going to probably look to add that in as extra credit, just so that we're a little bit more comfortable and confident, not just with the material, but honestly with our stress and your grades. Clearly not in our comfort zone for any of us, seeing as I've always said I hate technology, and we're proving that. So I'm going to switch to the tab for the NoRe. I'm going to show you very quickly where you're going to be able to see the material, recognize that it won't match up with our chapters, so whatever I type in, that's something that you're going to have to make sure when I load it to Google Classroom that you are aware of what you should be working on. And none of the NoRe stuff will be have a deadline of any earlier than at least our right now expected date back, which is after spring break. So you have some time to practice that. If I put a deadline any earlier, there is no way for me to change it. So when you go into NoRe, you should find that will have videos, it will have lessons, to each lesson. There's actually a video that you can watch if you're having trouble. So hopefully it is, I believe, each time only 10 questions. Sorry, I'm just making sure that the lag isn't worse than what I'm talking, and hopefully I should be able to help you guys through this, and I'll figure out the other mic I guess, at some point. At least you guys are more patient than I'm sure the other classes would be. So let's see. I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you the lesson and go to a question, and what you're going to see on the screen is a question, and then of course somebody pops out next to it and asks if you have a question, and you can watch a video if you're unsure. All right, so what you were looking at, hopefully you were able to see the little guy at the bottom, and with every question there's an example video of how to do that. So the no-re again is just going to be considered extra credit. We are going to hopefully have that help with some of it. I think what's nice is it will allow you guys the opportunity to practice without having to honestly always do con. Con is always something that you can do on your own, so keep that in mind. So we've talked about, you saw that there, I will load the rules again. I will and so we've done the rules. We've talked about Alex. We talked about no-re. The other thing that we are going to look at is then honestly our lessons. And thankfully, the majority of our lessons I will still do how we've been comfortable with. We will do them on the hover cam. And I have already loaded pre-existing notes so that you are able to take a look at some of the assignments, try them yourself, see what you're comfortable with, and we'll go from there. I can honestly say, as I am sure all of you would agree, this is definitely not what we're all comfortable with, so I want to make sure that I'm as patient as I can be, and you guys are as patient as you can be. So far, is there any questions that I haven't answered that I've tried to at least collect from the emails? I know that you guys can chat and you can type anything in, and thank you for at least being my first guinea pigs of the day. That's honestly why I had you guys go first. Any it's been a long 17 minutes, huh? Anything you guys can think of? All right. The hover cam is very different, not with the overhead, I can say that. And everybody's still able to hear me, correct? As long as I stay on the hover cam. All right, let's hope. Thank you, Molly. Again, I know there's a delay, so if at any point I'm going too fast, let me know so that I know what to do. Okay, so when you want us to do the no reassignment, should we go to assignments? Yeah, I will, thanks Gus. I will make sure that anything that is actually assigned, I will put in writing in Google Classroom. That way you don't have to rely on the videos for that. I know that that could be a bit much, and I want to make sure that we get all of that taken care of and nobody has to question that. The way I hope all of the rest of the videos will go will be strictly lesson based. I can put up, if need be, any questions, but from now on, everything will be typed in Google Classroom, so you don't have to worry about it being just from the video. Did that, I hope, answer your question? I'm wondering too if you meant where to click at the no re. I'm assuming it's going to be in assignments. I know I have a teacher account that I can go to. And I know you have a student one, and I do believe it is in assignments. And it would be, oh no, you know what? It might, that is a good question. I might have to email Mr. Colahan, but I do believe I just clicked on in the student account Algebra 2, and it told I was able to, in the student account, go straight to the lesson. Okay. All right, so today what I'm hoping to accomplish is basically answering your questions with anything that we were to come up with. I did go over some of, will there be a delay? Will there be daily assignments end in no re? I haven't decided that yet, Emma. I will tell you that everything I'm gonna load, thankfully, I did bring the 1970 version of everything, which is paper copies, and I plan on at least loading all of the paper copies. I plan on giving you each already the assignments loaded. You can see here that I have our 8-1 practice that will be loaded. I also loaded all of the answers that I would expect you to actually do with them, so that if there's any issues, if there's any questions, I do believe this one, there's only the evens that I've done. So my goal is that you are going to self-pace. You're going to have assignments that you're going to do. I will write them up just like they're assignments. And you will try to do the homework as if 8-1 was assigned. If you're going to do 8-1 as if it's assigned, you can always check my answers and then kind of gauge where you're at. My hope is that I can look to give an Alex assignment of 5 questions where this homework has helped you accomplish that. And then if I give a no reassignment, it is more of a completion. If you do it, great. If you don't and you don't have time, or if it feels like it's too much, you don't have to. What I'm trying to do is provide you the easiest stuff online so that you don't feel like everything's as if we're sitting in a classroom. So I'm trying to group everything. Thanks. I'm glad that that seems to have answered your question. I'm hoping that I can fix the delay a little bit better, because it just seems like we're really far behind. I suppose the mic problem is bigger than that. All right, so today I am going to load what will be 8-1 notes. There will be a lot. It is, again, these are not notes that you need to take in their entirety. Nothing is changing. I'm not changing any of how I've done anything. You are all very aware of how I do notes, and the only difference is you guys are one class. Where I took a lot of these notes, you will see that there's still color coding, and these are all going to be loaded today for just the first section. But then what you'll probably notice is there'll be different periods and different classes and different markers and everything, so that you'll see that there's a variety of examples. I tried not to repeat the same examples when I had 3 classes last year. So I'm actually stealing from myself finally and using some of the stuff that I had last year to push to you, so that you can kind of gauge where do you want to be, what do you want to do. Again, we're going to all have to make sure that, at least for now, we definitely budget our time and try to stay on track. I am certain all of your parents are just as overwhelmed as the rest of us. My goal is to keep us structured and organized as best as possible. And I just continue to ask at least you guys, because you're older and wiser, to give me feedback, so that if I'm not paying attention to the lag, if I'm not being heard, because thank you for the microphone information, I need to be able to figure out how to fix that, because clearly never have done this. So I appreciate your patience. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to give you all of these notes, and I'm going to give you some practice questions, and then that's all you're going to do. And then tomorrow, be ready with asking questions so that you know where I need to go, because tomorrow is just going to be an answer question day. We're not going to worry about starting from scratch and pushing notes to you every day and having new things every day. It is just going to be answer your questions, and then we're going to go ahead, and the next day I'll give notes. And so every other day will be notes, the other day will be practice. So it'll be about 2 to 3 days per section, just to make sure we're all comfortable. Does that sound fair? All right. If you do have out your notebooks, I do want to talk about what you're going to see in your notes, and they are going to be different, because obviously I don't want to just repeat what you're doing. Hopefully. Thank you, Emma. It's very weird talking without seeing what everybody's doing. Although everyone knows how much I like to hear myself talk. Right now, I do want to touch on a couple things that you won't see right away in your notes. When we simplify, please remember it just means to reduce. And of course, just like I normally would, I do have a ton of markers, sorry. And the first thing that I wrote down at the top there is expressions. Please pay attention to the fact that expressions and I'm sorry, I think it's interesting. I'm also trying to figure out how to fix this. All right, so simplify means only with expressions. When we talk about solving, that will have an equal sign in the equation, so please be aware of that. The first thing that you're going to take note of when we simplify is that it's going to be monomial divided by monomial, which means one term divided by one term. And monomial, remember, no plus or minus signs. Everything with monomials is one term. We are going to talk about binomials. Don't forget that those are two terms. And trinomials, three terms. And obviously we've talked a lot about polynomials, and that's many terms. What is important about remembering all of this? You cannot forget that we have to factor all the time. And that's why I guess if there's a silver lining to this, that this chapter just happened to come at, I guess, the right time, if there's a way to put that any better, that we've done so much with factoring that this is at least going to be better than trying to do the last chapter at this point. So one of the easiest ways to look at this, if we're going to give an example, and I don't believe the book at this point, or even anywhere you would see, would ask us, but we're going to talk about it anyway. If I have 15x cubed y to the fourth divided by, let's go 24x to the fifth y cubed. And of course, I didn't do it, but the directions would be to just simplify. Now, the first thing that I'm going to suggest, and they talk a lot about LCM, or GCF, and least common denominator, and throughout the entire chapter you're going to see, if you decide to go to the book, they're going to use all of those. Remember, what you're looking for is what is going to reduce all of these. So sometimes I would suggest reduce numbers, then variables, and we have done this a ton, so it shouldn't be brand new. To make this easier, I also don't worry about a lot of the exponent rules. I know that we're supposed to take, when bases are the same, we're supposed to subtract our powers and then worry about putting it back into our fraction. Especially with 3 minus 5, you'd end up with that -2 power. I suggest worrying about the numbers. So for instance, 15 and 24, we would be able to reduce by 3. So it's like division. And put that in our fraction bar just to kind of make it a little bit easier. Then deal with the powers. Now when you deal with the powers, again, we could do x 3 minus 5, which would give us x to the -2nd. And we could deal with y's, y 4 minus 3, and that would give us y to the 1st. I totally get that this is going to be a mental thing, but at least when they're monomials, we can simply say if I have 3 on top and 5 on the bottom, where is there going to be more left over? We know that that 2 better show up at the bottom. So x squared goes to the denominator. When we look at y to the 4th and y cubed, I can see that it was a positive power, so I can put that on top. Now the catch is, we have to make sure when our final answer is written, this is our final answer, but we have to account for understanding that even if it's just in the directions, we have to make sure x does not equal 0. So our denominator, oops, spell it right. We have to make sure that our denominator can't equal 0. So if x was 0, 0 times 8 would make the whole thing 0. And so sometimes we are going to talk about our domain, and that's referencing what our denominator is allowed to be. Now, the question I have is, I want to know if I do, at least initially, one example, does that seem like one example per situation would be okay? I don't want this to be that you have to sit for a straight hour if you don't want to listening. I know some of you will, and I appreciate that, because clearly that's the kind of time frame I'm working with here. But I know that there is the opportunity for you to go back and forth. I do plan on showing you a few more, but I just want to make sure that that at least is comfortable. Sorry, I'm going to ask at least one of you to just say yes or no if that sounds good, because then I'm going to start another problem here shortly. All right. All right, so thank you, Molly. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Hallie. Look at, that's all nice. I feel better now. It's very weird to teach and not see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to give you one problem with multiplying, and then you can kind of get the idea of what how we're going to reduce. So I'm looking just at the 8-1 practice that you're going to get, and I'm going to do an odd because I did not do odd answers for online. And I'm looking at x squared minus 5x minus 24, and this is number 11. It's going to be over 6x plus 2x squared, and we're going to multiply it by 5x squared and then 8 minus x. So this is obviously a lot different than the monomial. And what we have to do is we have to remember, before we do anything, we need to remember to factor. That is going to be, whether it's multiplication or division, before you do anything, factor. And it is going to feel in most cases like it is 4 separate problems. So we need to make sure that you deal with it like it's all separate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my numerator. And thankfully, the whole purpose of this is that they're all factorable, so we don't have to worry about are we using the quadratic formula? Are we going to have to worry about completing the square? So all of those things that we did take from that chapter, we understand that it's going to be factorable. -8 and a +3 will make -24. -8 plus 3 gives us a -5. In the denominator, what we're going to look for is to factor out, again, a number that's in common. And then we're going to look to factor out an x. And what's left here is 3 plus x. Now, the nice part with addition is we can't forget addition is commutative. So it can switch. Subtraction is not commutative, so it's not going to switch. So then we'll come over here and we're going to do this separately. The 5x squared gets to stay, seeing as that guy doesn't have any addition or subtraction. But at the bottom here, we're going to factor out a -1. And the reason we're going to factor out a -1 is I can see that I have an x minus 8 and I have an 8 minus x, so the terms themselves are the same. But what's not the same is the order. So subtraction is not commutative, and we have to make sure that we pay attention to that. So by factoring out the -1, it now allows me to make that a positive x and that a -8. Now, the nice part about a lot of these problems that you're going to see is that they are going to be the same. You're going to see matches in places. So these two here are the same, the x plus 3 and the 3 plus x, because they are commutative and I can switch them around. These two would not have been the same had I not factored out that -1. So the second step is to cancel our like terms, make sure quantities are what we consider terms, not just individual x's. So we have to remember quantities are terms. So when we do this one, we can see that now our x minus 8s will cancel, and had we not switched that around with the -1, it wouldn't have been allowed to cancel. I can cancel the x plus 3 and the 3 plus x because, again, addition is commutative. One of the x's down here will cancel with one of them up here, and that should, Miss J just gave me a compliment. She texted to tell me that I'm doing well. Thank you, Miss J. So anyway, I can cancel one here and I can cancel one here. Before I do anything, when I write my final answer, or at least what I hope is my final answer, I suggest making sure that because it's multiplication, you have one fraction bar. And again, whatever is going across the top, we write down. And I still have 1x left there. And then across the bottom, I write what's left. And I do have a 2 times that -1. So we end up with the entire fraction, because that's a -2. We have 5x over 2. And this is our final answer. Now again, we have to be careful because the nice part about this is our denominator here is just 2. We don't have to worry about what the domain is in the final answer. So the domain of our final answer is okay. What we have to look at is what would have happened up here in the initial. So when we talk again about domain, pay attention to the initial problem and our 6x plus 2x squared. We know that x can't be 0. And I could set it equal to 0 and I could solve, but at this point, because of the addition, I think we could even look at this as a mental math problem. We do not want it to equal 0. So if we set it equal to 0, we could solve. And we already know we factored here. So if we took a 2x and our 3 plus x, and with our 0 product property, set each equal to 0, we know x is 0 and x would be -3. So we can't have our denominator have that in it. So our 0 and -3 won't work because it would make that denominator 0. And with our other one, our 8 minus x, if we set it equal to 0, we end up with x would equal 8. So we also know that our domain for the original problem can't equal 8. So even though our final answer didn't have an x, we still have to make sure that we're paying attention to what the initial problem was. All right, the last thing that I'll do, just so that you understand where some of the homework problems are and what the notes are, is if we are going to do division. So with our division, remember, keep, change, flip. We always keep the first fraction, change to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. So I'm not going to go through a whole nother example with you because it is identical to multiplication, but I am going to show you that with number 17 on the same practice, we would change this to 2s squared minus 7s minus 15, which is originally over s plus 4 squared. Now, don't forget, that means that when I do my work, there's 2 of these that I'll put in the denominator. I'll have an s plus 4 squared and I'll have an s plus 4 squared. In the original problem that I'm looking at from our worksheet, there's a division symbol. I'm not even going to copy that on my paper because I know that I've kept the first fraction as it is. I'm going to change the sign to multiplication, and now what was the denominator will be the numerator, and I will put the numerator now in the denominator. While you're practicing this, I know some of you can absolutely already do some of the factoring in your head. For instance, the denominator here, it took everything in my power to not factor this into s minus 5, because I can do that. So you don't have to, obviously. At this point, take some liberties. If you can do a lot of it in 1 or 2 steps because you can mentally write it out appropriately, then do so. Otherwise, I, in my notes, have gone over the top as usual to make sure that you can see every step. Now, the difference is you have these videos that you can go back to, and you can look. None of these notes will be scanned in anymore, but it will be saved at the, I don't know, my channel. The fact that I just used my channel sounds funny, but we'll go with that. Does everybody agree that it's okay for me to go anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes when we're not talking about trying to get started? I think that might be okay for you guys. I know that I'm looking at the time right now, and it's interesting that we are going to hit exactly 50 minutes when I stop. But hopefully that'll work for you guys. Email, comment. I'm going to have to start honors geometry very shortly. And then hopefully the fact that the dogs have stayed quiet and the kids are not trying to get in the mic is kind of fun. We'll see how long that lasts throughout the next couple weeks. So I will be uploading the information. Oh, Joe, do you have any homework today? The only thing you are going to be told that you should be doing is, again, the notes that I'll upload, and just practice the problems that are on the 8-1 worksheet. There is obviously nothing that I can that I'm going to assign you that is of any particular thing. But Miss J is right. If you have any questions, you can take a picture of that. And I know that some of you in the past have even done that. And I can send a picture right back to you via email. That's something that some of you have done in the past, and it has worked very well. So absolutely. And know that with those pictures that you take, make sure you email me what your question is, or in the picture, point to it. That way I can address it with pictures back to you. And that can all be done via email. I can even, if you find that it might help the rest of the class, we can also do that through Classroom, and that can be part of the comments that are listed at the bottom of Classroom. So yeah, no homework traditionally tonight. It is going to be that it's up to you how many of these practice problems from 8-1 that you practice. Remember that tomorrow the idea is that you are going to be asking me questions to clarify 8-1. If you have any questions that you did choose to go to the Alex and try those questions, either with your phone or on your computer. Stop, I spoke too soon. Whether it's with your computer or with your cell phone, take a picture of the Alex question or take a picture of the no-re question and send that to me prior to tomorrow. That way I have a chance to look at it and can write it down on paper, because right now, in case I cannot figure out how to get the rest of the microphones to work, we're going to try to keep as much with the hover cam as possible. So are there any other questions before we sign off for the day? Give me about a half an hour to load your notes, go do another class information, see if there's something else from another class that you can get organized with, and we'll go from there. I will be live streaming every day, Sabrina. That is, I work every day. I'm still in school. I know that sounds weird, especially with the dog barking in the background. But that is my goal, is to live stream every day. That way your questions can drive the second day. My stuff I'll talk about with notes the first day every time. So like today we introduced our 8-1 notes. And then tomorrow, we'll go ahead and go over any questions you have. I can always go a little further with the notes, but we can kind of go from there. So that is the goal, is to live stream every day. That way you guys have contact, at least even with the delay, with me every day. Any other questions, guys, before we sign off for the day? Please email if you have questions. Yes, Gus, if you miss anything, you can always watch the recording. You can rewind the recording. You can pause the recording. But absolutely, you can re-watch. Miss J is better than I am at, I see that the answer goes faster maybe if I typed, but Any other questions, guys? If not, look for the stuff on Google Classroom, and we'll hopefully try again tomorrow with better mics. Thanks, guys.